Thank you, Secretary Esper, not just for your comments this morning, but for your inspired leadership of our Army at a particularly critical time. I'll tell you, his comments rang true with me. I enlisted in 1973, and like many in this room, kind of lived through the change that Dr. Esper outlined for us. The challenge is immense, but this Army is up to that challenge for sure. Secretary Esper laid out among the many key leaders of the way ahead, perhaps the team that's leading the effort is the Under Secretary of the Army and the Vice Chief of Staff. And so we're very pleased now to hear directly from the Under Secretary of the Army, the Honorable Ryan McCarthy, a Virginia Military Institute graduate, a combat veteran of with the 75th Ranger Regiment in Afghanistan, well-experienced, an extraordinary leader, a man who loves soldiers with every ounce of his body and energy. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome the 33rd Under Secretary of the Army, the Honorable Ryan McCarthy.
No, well, tomorrow, right? Yeah. General Hand wants me to not to give any baseball jokes because I think opening day is on the 29th. He's an Indians fan, so it's going to be another long year, I'm sure. Congressman Mo Brooks, it's great to see you here today. Thank you for your unwavering support to the Army, as well as the senior congressional staff that came down from Washington. I know you had a very long week. You got the budget through, and we're very grateful. And we'll do our best to make the most of that proposal and continue to earn your trust. Thank you, General Ham, for your kind introduction and for your leadership. On a personal level, you've been great to me for the last 241 days. So I got about 1,095 to go, so we got to keep rowing. Very sincere thank you to the AUSA staff for planning and executing this great event. Events like these are where leaders can come together and collaborate and put ideas into action. I also want to thank the staff of Army Materiel Command and General Gus Perna for doing what you do best, supporting the Army, especially when we converge on Huntsville for 3 days. So the title of this week's event, Modernizing and Equipping America's Army for Today and Tomorrow, describes just what we're doing, building readiness for today and tomorrow. Conversations over the next 3 days will demonstrate how we're accomplishing the Army vision that Dr. Esper just laid out. A Huntsvillian level of ingenuity and innovation that built up the rocket program will be required to achieve that vision. It's been 175 days since we announced the pursuit of Army Futures Command and the establishment of cross-functional teams as a part of the Army's modernization efforts. We've established priorities, we piloted cross-functional teams, and Futures Command will become a reality over the next several months. Opportunity awaits our action. The story of General Walter Bedell, a.k.a. Beetle Smith, encapsulates much of what we're doing in our efforts. Many of you have heard of Beetle Smith. He served as General Marshall's Assistant Secretary of the General Staff before he went over to Europe to serve as Chief of Staff to General Eisenhower during the World War II effort. Then later to serve as the Ambassador of the USSR and Director of CIA. Less commonly known are General Smith's contributions to one of the greatest acquisitions before the war, the Jeep. The then Major Smith, along with an industry representative from the American Bantam Card Company, went to General Marshall, circumventing the bureaucratic process that was opposed to and disconnected from requirements. Does this sound familiar? General Marshall, who knew that Beetle Smith had experience executing maneuvers at Fort Benning and had his trust, asked him if the vehicle was what the force needed and whether or not it met the requirements, with which Major Smith responded, "I think it's good," and suggested that the Army test the vehicle and that it would find the money in the budget to support the endeavor. General Marshall gave the go-ahead, and after 70 Jeeps were tested, commands immediately saw the vehicle's value, and as you can imagine, they wanted them quickly. Because the small Bantam company couldn't mass produce the vehicle, Bantam's design was prototyped by Ford Motor Company in Willis Overland, from which the best prototype was selected for mass production by American industry. Less than 6 years later, over 500,000 Jeeps were produced for the Americans and the Allies during the World War II effort. There are a few lessons we can take from this story. First, we have to build the environment that will integrate ideas and allow them to be pushed forward in a relevant and informed fashion. Second, leadership must empower and trust subordinates to have the wherewithal necessary to execute intent and to do what is best for the Army. Third, we must be able to work with all kinds of companies, including small entrepreneurial companies that have revolutionary ideas, and help them partner with larger companies to scale those ideas into mass production. Fourth, prototyping and experimentation is required to ensure the production of the best capability solution. And finally, we must prioritize and resource our efforts with maximum utility for every dollar. So this brings us to today. Dr. Esper and General Milley's leadership focus and priorities have made our Army stronger and more prepared. When General Milley evaluated where emphasis is going to be needed to produce the lethal units that could fight in the anticipated operating environment, he developed 6 modernization priorities. And they are long-range precision fires, next-generation combat vehicle, future vertical lift, the Army network, integrated air missile defense, and soldier lethality. To support these 6 priorities, we created 8 cross-functional teams, 1 team for each priority, and 2 cross-cutting CFTs of position navigation and timing and synthetic training environment. Secretary of Defense James Mattis has said, if you cannot build trust, your leadership is obsolete, and you have to have the courage to go home. Living by this principle, I can say with great confidence that our Beetlesmiths have our confidence, are resourced, and are producing amazing results. I would be remiss not to say that most of the credit in this success goes to my wingman, Vice Chief of Staff General James McConsville, for selecting the CFT leaders and enabling their success. I recognize the efforts of many in this room have put in, and truly am thankful for all of it. But there is much work to do, and it requires the right culture. We encourage our industrial base to build against challenges in the current and anticipated operating environments. This requires our Army enterprise to achieve the speed of innovation at current standards in the information age, instead of the older industrial age architecture that brought America from the 1970s into the 1990s. The private sector has outpaced the military in innovation through its organizational agility. And we, the Army, have to be organized to work more effectively with the private sector. Quicker decision-making capability and capacity will allow us to meet the demands of our national defense strategy. Using Dr. Esper's words, we have to build, fail, learn, and build again to bring the right solutions to our warfighters, just like Beetlesmith's Jeep. Futures Command shapes the culture environment we need. Our CFTs have our trust. And finally, we are executing reform by reallocating funds to ensure these efforts are funded while refocusing our bureaucratic processes to only the necessary tasks. The conditions are set for the Army to capitalize on the 2-year overall 18 to 19 defense budget, with a $22.5 billion increase to the top line and a $7.3 billion spike to the research, development, and acquisition investment accounts. This allows us to achieve our 70-30 investment strategy. This includes an increase from budget from $9.4 billion to $10.6 billion in RDT&E. That is 70% to incremental upgrades in existing systems, and 30% dedicated to new capabilities and technologies. For 2 years, General Milley has been putting together the concept and shaping against the current Army operating model. Under Dr. Esper's leadership and the chemistry of his team, we have put forward a concept to formally change the Army. Forming Army Futures Command will build the environment that ensures enduring success. Change of this scope will be incredibly difficult for an organization as large as the Army, as it is not something we have done since 1973. We will succeed because the consequences of not changing are too grave. The Army cannot bow to complacency. We cannot falter in the face of bureaucratic inertia. We must foster the environment that made the 1940 acquisition so successful. Upon activation of the Futures Command, the Army will have a total of 4 commands, each on the same equal footing. Futures Command, as the name implies, will be focused on the future force. The command is being designed on the following principles. It will be the custodian of our modernization efforts by streamlining processes and driving integration. It will bring the concepts and the core functions of ARCIC and requirements together with the core functions of RDE comms engineering and acquisition support into one team. It would be built as a small, agile headquarters, focused on flexibility, agility, collaboration, and speed. It will have as its focus faster innovation, experimentation, and demonstration with CFT oversight. It will enable rapid prototyping that can fail early and learn fast, with increases in operational inputs and touches. Its command group will be located near innovative and agile industrial and academic institutions. This will help form the innovation and synergistic culture required to lead the Army's modernization effort. And finally, its program managers will maintain their acquisition authority, report to the Army Acquisition Executive, Dr. Bruce Jetty, but will be formally matrixed with the CFTs they support in order to maintain collaboration, accountability, teamwork, and proven success. Futures Command will restructure the roles and responsibilities of concepts, requirements, and acquisition under one roof. Think of it as a rewiring and a delayering of the current structure and processes from across the entire Army. This command will have 3 subordinate elements built from existing Army structure and functions to meet its design principles mentioned earlier. Only the Futures Command headquarters and command group will be situated in the soon-to-be-announced urban center. All other aspects of the command will stay in place, and folks are realistic, you just change the unit patch on their sleeve. The 3 subordinate elements are futures and concepts, which will identify and prioritize capability development needs and opportunities based on threat and technology. Combat development, which will conceptualize and develop requirements for identified needs and opportunities. And combat systems, which will refine, engineer, and produce developed solutions. Under each of the subordinate elements are pieces from TRADOC, AMC, ASALT, and Army Test and Evaluation Command. The Army's program managers will remain under control of Acquisition Corps, but will be matrixed to the command. This crafts a formal relationship to foster teamwork, accountability, and agility. The current CFTs will be part of this command. They will remain champions of the priority they support and see their projects through completion. Over time, additional CFTs will activate and deactivate as priorities evolve to the operational environment and Army requirements. As you may already know, we will be narrowing the initial set of cities down to a more manageable number based on some of the following criteria: proximity to talent, proximity to private sector innovation, academic STEM and R&D, quality of life, availability, cost, and time assessment, and assessment of civic support. We announce the final 10 cities in the next few months. After we narrow it to 4 cities, General McConville and I will conduct a recon of each site and then put our recommendation to Dr. Esper and General Milley, who will then announce the Futures Command location with initial operating capability, or IOC, this summer, and a full operational capability, or FOC, the following summer. IOC is defined as organizational realignment, key leaders are identified, facilities are identified, formal chains of command are established, and roles and responsibilities are drafted. FOC is defined as the organization is fully manned, facilities are operational, and roles and responsibilities have been refined on what we learned this summer. As much as location is important, so are selecting the right leaders. We are in the process of selecting a commander who will not only embody everything the Futures Command is, but will execute a critical function of inculcating a process-burdened organization to perform like the commercial sector. The commander will be announced in the next few weeks. The symposium this week highlights the CFTs and their role in the modernization effort. Results are proving how impactful the CFT organizational structure is in streamlining the decision-making process. General McConville, Dr. Bruce Jetty, the ASALT, and I meet regularly with the CFTs to ensure the proper horizontal and vertical integration. The CFTs have 3 layers of leadership and are seated under General McConville and myself. This ensures a senior, additionally, each CFT has a 3- or 4-star mentor, which ensures a senior leader champion who knows the required capabilities the Army needs. This allows quicker decisions and access to move faster in the process while maintaining accountability. Ideas are shared, and the progress is amazing to watch. Pieces are moving quickly, including improvements on design and development, maximizing utility and investments, improving collaboration and fusion between stakeholders who are the concept developers, requirements writers, and users. When the CFTs take the stage today and tomorrow, the following is what you can expect. First, they should tell you about the programmatic process they're using to accomplish the task. Second, they will show that teamwork is more than sharing the stage, meaning they will expand on how the coordination is going between concepts, requirements, and acquisition. Third, they should elaborate on how the senior mentor is involved, and how the mentor is championing our Army's efforts to push the conversation on how these solutions will enable multi-domain battle at echelon. Fourth, they will talk the progress of signature systems. And finally, they will inform you of the specific results they've achieved to date. You will see that they are not circumventing our systems, but they are streamlining efforts from idea to decision and getting the solutions our warfighters need, creating collaboration and teamwork between relevant stakeholders. The initial metrics of effectiveness for our CFTs are the reduction of requirements from 5 to 7 years to 2 years or less, and ensuring that the signature capabilities in each CFT are appropriately funded and moving towards a rapid fielding date. The indirect measures we will see are the speed at which other initiatives start and have a projected fielding date, and a formalized effective relationship between concept writers, requirement writers, warfighters, acquisition professionals, technology experts, budgeters, and testers. With the environment built and trusted leaders in place, we move next to how we prioritize and resource our efforts. To accomplish all we just talked about, we are reforming our budget allocations in the out years to generate the cost savings needed to put forth funding for our readiness and modernization efforts. 2018 and 2019, we received an enormous increase in the budget, and we are grateful. That said, we're not out of the woods. The Budget Control Act looms large in 2020. In order to maintain momentum and not fall from the pending fiscal cliff, we will initiate a robust reform effort that will require comprehensive reallocation of resources within our portfolios to support modernization efforts. We're going to do this by looking internally across 12 different areas in line with the recent DoD reform efforts. To accomplish this monstrous task, each of us within the Secretary and the Army staff are championing a reform initiative within the Army enterprise. This starts at looking at each initiative's potential cost savings and the current planned POM cycle from 20 to 24. It's going to be hard, and I know there are a lot of great programs and initiatives that add value. But we're going to do what we must to invest in the future of the Army. We will prioritize the capital, and we will build the Army we need. We'll announce our program design this summer. Again, opportunity exists for us to modernize our Army, as we've allocated 80% of our S&T funds towards our priorities. Each portion of our Army's organizing, manning, equipping, and training functions will be touched going forward. We know we must grow our future leaders and equip them with the best equipment our nation can provide. As you sit in the CFT panels, I challenge you to ask the hard questions. We need your help in understanding how to build a culture that produces evidence-based, outcome-driven policies and experimentation. We need to be able to increase the speed and timeliness of our acquisition processes through the use of waivers, exemptions, and incentives for quickly resolving concerns. Moving forward, just as General Marshall did with the 1940s Jeep, we are building the organizational environment that empowers our trusted leaders to and make the timely and relevant decision on Army priorities. We're integrating with the commercial sector, both large and small, for quicker experimentation and prototyping. We're finding the money in the budget to support these efforts. And finally, we're ensuring the readiness and lethality of our force to perform its assigned missions. Thank you for your time today. General McConville and I look forward to taking your questions. Army strong.